The California sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple as Vin Diesel pulled his black Dodge Charger into the back lot of a roadside diner, just off Highway 101. The small neon sign reading Toretto's flickered against the darkening sky. He sat for a moment, engine idling, and looked at the humble building with a mixture of pride and weariness. 3 years ago, he had quietly purchased this place as an investment, naming it after his most famous character as a private joke. But unlike his other business ventures, this one felt personal. Maybe it was the way the diner reminded him of places he'd hung out as a young man, before fame changed everything. Vin rubbed his tired eyes. The last 6 months had been non-stop, filming in 4 different countries, endless press junkets, and more stunts than his 40-something body appreciated. What he needed was a break from being Vin Diesel, the movie star. Just a few hours of being normal. He pulled the hood of his black sweatshirt over his head and adjusted his plain baseball cap lower over his eyes. This wasn't his first surprise visit to check on the diner, though he made sure these drop-ins were rare enough that the staff didn't expect them. His manager, Bobby, knew he sometimes did this, showing up unannounced to see how things really ran when no one was putting on a show for the boss. Vin slipped through the employee entrance in the back, using the key he kept but rarely needed. The kitchen smelled like grilled onions and fresh coffee. 2 cooks worked at the grill, too busy calling orders and flipping burgers to notice him. Good. That's how he wanted it. He moved quietly past the supply shelves and walk-in freezer. The hallway leading to the main dining area was dimly lit, with a staff bulletin board covered in schedule printouts and safety notices. As he approached the corner that would take him into the main restaurant space, something made him stop in his tracks, crying. Someone was definitely crying. The sound came from the small break room to his right. The door was partly open, spilling a rectangle of fluorescent light into the hallway. Vin hesitated. He wasn't here to get involved in staff problems. His plan had been simple. Grab a coffee at the counter, maybe some food, watch how the place operated for an hour, then leave without anyone realizing the owner had been there. But there was something about the muffled sobs that pulled at him. They weren't dramatic or attention-seeking. They were the kind of quiet cries someone lets out when they think they're completely alone, when they're trying hard to pull themselves together but can't quite manage it. Vin took a deep breath. He'd walked into plenty of tough situations in real life, not just in movies. Still, this felt different, more personal somehow. He moved closer to the door and gently pushed it open. A young woman in the diner's black and red uniform sat at the small break table, her back to the door. Her shoulders shook slightly as she wiped her face with a napkin. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and even from behind, her posture showed someone trying to regain control. He cleared his throat softly. "Hey, you okay?" The woman jumped and spun around, quickly stuffing the tear-soaked napkin in her pocket. Her eyes widened in recognition despite his casual disguise. "Mr. Diesel, I'm so sorry, I didn't—" She stood quickly, nearly knocking over her chair. Her name tag read Elisa. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but she was already trying to put on a professional face. "I was just taking my break. I'll get right back out there." Vin raised his hands. No, it's fine. Your break is your time." He paused, feeling suddenly awkward in the small room. "I just heard—" "I wanted to make sure everything was all right." Elisa looked down, clearly embarrassed. "Yes, sir. Everything's fine. Just a rough day. Nothing that affects my work, I promise." There was something in the way she said it, the quick reassurance about her work performance, that told Vin this was someone who didn't have the luxury of bad days. Someone who couldn't afford to lose this job. "Mind if I sit for a minute?" he asked, gesturing to the other chair. "I'm actually trying to stay low-key tonight. Not really here as the boss." She looked surprised but nodded. "Of course." Vin took off his cap and set it on the table, then lowered himself into the plastic chair. Up close, he could see Elisa was probably in her late 20s. Her hands showed signs of hard work. A few small burns that came from carrying hot plates, nails cut short for practicality. "Been working here long?" he asked. "Almost 2 years now," she replied, her voice steadier. "Since you bought the place, actually." Vin nodded. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. He wasn't usually at a loss for words, but the break room felt miles away from movie sets and interview couches. "Look," Elisa finally said, straightening her uniform. I really appreciate you checking on me, but I should get back to my tables. Friday nights get busy and Tina's covering for me. As she stood to leave, her phone fell from her pocket. When she bent to pick it up, several small cards spilled out as well. Vin helped gather them. They were flashcards with medical terms written in neat handwriting. "You're studying?" he asked, handing them back. Something shifted in Elisa's expression, a small flash of pride breaking through the earlier distress. "Nursing school." "Part-time," she said. "I'm halfway through the program." "That's impressive," Vin said genuinely. "Working here full-time and going to school?" "And raising my son," she added with a small smile. "He's 8. The pieces started coming together for Vin. The pressure of single parenthood, education, and a service job was a heavy load for anyone. But he sensed there was something specific behind today's tears. "Look," he said, "I don't want to pry, but sometimes talking to someone who's not in your everyday life can help. No pressure, though." Elisa looked at him for a long moment, perhaps weighing whether to open up to her famous boss. Then she sighed and sat back down. "My car broke down this morning. Transmission." She said it simply, but Vin understood immediately that for her, this wasn't a simple inconvenience. "The mechanic says it'll cost $2,700 to fix." "That's rough," Vin said. "Yeah, I've been saving for next semester's tuition. This will wipe that out completely." She twisted the hem of her apron. "And without a car, I can't get my son to school, myself to class, or even here for shifts. The bus routes don't work with my schedule." Vin felt a tug of familiarity with her situation. Long before he became famous, he knew what it meant to have plans derailed by one unexpected expense, to work multiple jobs while chasing a dream, to feel everything balancing on a knife's edge. "What about family? Anyone who can help out?" he asked. Elisa shook her head. "My mom watches my son while I work, but she's on a fixed income. My brother's overseas with the military." She gave a small, determined smile. "We'll figure it out." "We always do. I'm sorry you had to see me having a moment of weakness." "That's not weakness," Vin said firmly. "That's being human after getting hit with a tough break." The door to the break room suddenly swung open and a flustered server poked her head in. "Elisa, your table 8 is asking for—" She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes growing huge as she recognized Vin. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" "Hi there," Vin said with a friendly nod. The server, her name tag read Tina, seemed frozen in place, mouth open. Elisa stood up. "I'll take care of table 8 right now, Tina." This seemed to break Tina's trance. "Right, yes, table 8. They, wanted more coffee in their check." She backed out of the doorway, still staring at Vin. "I should really get back out there," Elisa said, composing herself completely now. The professional mask was back in place. "It was nice meeting you, Mr. Diesel. I'm sorry it wasn't under better circumstances." "Just Vin is fine," he said. "And don't worry about it. We all have rough days." She nodded and headed for the door, but turned back briefly. "Are you staying? Would you like something to eat? I can make sure no one bothers you." Vin considered for a moment. His original plan had been to observe without being noticed, but that was clearly not going to happen now. Still, he was curious about this place, his place, and the people who made it run. "Actually, yeah, I think I'll grab a booth in the back if there's one available. Whatever the house special is today would be great." "Friday's special is the double bacon cheeseburger with spicy fries," Elisa said with a genuine smile. "It's pretty good if I do say so myself." As she left, Vin sat there for another moment thinking. He put his cap back on and pulled his hood up, preparing to join the other customers in the diner. But his mind was still on Elisa's situation, the nursing student and single mom whose carefully balanced life was thrown into chaos by one car breakdown. He thought about the millions he earned per film, the houses, the cars, and then he thought about the $2,700 that stood between this hard-working woman and her future plans. Vin stood up and headed into the main part of the diner, already turning over possibilities in his mind. He hadn't built his career by walking away from problems, and something told him there was more to learn about Elisa and the rest of the staff at Toretto's Diner. The Friday night crowd at Toretto's Diner was in full swing when Vin slid into a corner booth. The vinyl seats were worn but clean, and the tabletop gleamed under the warm hanging lights. He kept his cap low, but he could feel the ripple of recognition moving through the restaurant. The whispers, the not-so-subtle glances, the phones discreetly aimed in his direction. He wasn't bothered by it. After 20-plus years in the spotlight, he'd learned to create a bubble of PR privacy even in public spaces. Right now, his attention was on watching how the diner operated, particularly Elisa. She moved between tables with practiced efficiency, balancing plates along her arm, remembering which customer wanted extra ketchup and which one needed a refill. Despite the emotional moment he'd witnessed earlier, she showed no signs of distress now. Her smile seemed genuine as she chatted with an elderly couple, and she patiently repeated the specials to a group of indecisive teenagers. "Your burger and fries," she said, setting a plate in front of him a few minutes later. The burger was impressive, thick and juicy with melted cheese and bacon peeking from beneath the bun. The fries gave off a spicy aroma that made his stomach rumble. "Thanks," he said, glancing at her name tag as if he hadn't already learned her name. "Elisa, can I get you anything else?" she asked, professional but not overly formal. "This looks perfect," he replied. "How long have you been serving here?" It was a casual question, the kind customers often asked servers, but he was genuinely curious about her. "Almost 2 years," she said, the same answer she'd given in the break room, since the place changed ownership. "You like it?" he asked, taking a bite of the burger. It was even better than it looked, juicy and flavorful with just the right balance of toppings. "I do," she said, and he could tell she meant it. "The staff is like family. The regulars are good people, and the hours work with my schedule." She gestured vaguely, and he knew she meant her school and parenting responsibilities. A call from another table pulled her away, and Vin continued his meal, observing the rhythm of the diner. The cook who expedited orders had a good system going, calling out tickets in a steady cadence. The busboy, actually a middle-aged man with a kind face, moved quickly but carefully, treating the dishes with respect rather than just hurrying to clear tables. As he ate, Vin noticed something interesting about how the staff interacted. When Tina struggled with a large order, Elisa jumped in to help without being asked. When the busboy fell behind during a sudden rush, the cook stepped out from the kitchen to clear a few tables. There was a natural teamwork happening, not the forced camaraderie of people who just punched the same time clock, but the easy cooperation of people who genuinely looked out for each other. The burger was half gone when a commotion near the entrance caught his attention. A man in his late 30s with slicked back hair and an expensive watch was speaking loudly to the hostess. "I don't care if you're full. Find me a table. Now." His voice carried across the diner, making several customers glance up from their meals. The hostess, a young woman who couldn't be more than 20, looked flustered. "Sir, I'm sorry, but there's a 30-minute wait. I'd be happy to add your name to the list. Do you know who I am?" the man demanded, loud enough that the nearby tables went quiet. "I'm Randy Keller. I own the dealership down the street. My business pays more in taxes than this dump makes in a year." Finn watched as Elisa noticed the situation and quietly made her way to the front. She positioned herself beside the young hostess, a subtle show of support. "Good evening, Mr. Keller," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We're honored you'd choose to dine with us tonight. Lily is right. We are at capacity right now, but we'd be happy to serve you as soon as a table opens up. It shouldn't be more than half an hour. Can I offer you a complimentary coffee while you wait?" The man, Randy, turned his attention to Elisa, clearly ready to continue his tirade. But something in her steady gaze made him pause. She wasn't confrontational, but she wasn't backing down either. "Fine," he finally said with poor grace. "But I want a booth, not a table. And make it quick." "Of course," Elisa replied, gesturing to the small waiting area. "I'll personally come get you when your booth is ready." As she walked back toward the kitchen, Vin noticed her stop at a table where an elderly couple was finishing their meal. She spoke briefly with them and they nodded. When she brought their check, she included 2 slices of pie on the house as a thank you for not lingering over coffee, he guessed. Strategic problem solving. Smooth de-escalation of a tense situation. Taking care of the young hostess while also keeping the business running. Finn was impressed. 20 minutes later, Elisa was back at his table, coffee pot in hand. "Refill?" she offered. "Sure," he said, pushing his cup forward. "That was well handled up front." She gave a small shrug as she poured. "Mr. Keller comes in about once a month. Always the same routine." "And you always give him what he wants?" Vin asked, curious about her approach. "I give him what he needs," she corrected with a hint of a smile. "A little attention, a good meal, and firm boundaries." He's actually not so bad once he feels like he's been heard. As if on cue, Vin glanced over to see the man now seated in a booth, laughing with his server, Tina, as she took his order. "You've got good instincts with people," Vin observed. "Comes with the job," Elisa said, but there was a quiet pride in her voice. "In nursing school, they call it bedside manner, but it's really just about seeing the person behind the behavior." She paused, then added, "Even when the behavior is pretty awful." A crash from across the room drew their attention. A little boy, maybe 4 years old, had knocked over a water glass. His mother looked mortified, frantically trying to mop up the spill with napkins while the child's eyes filled with tears. "Excuse me," Elisa said, already moving toward them. Vin watched as she knelt beside the child first, not the spill. She said something that made him giggle through his tears. Then she helped clean up, waving away the mother's apologies. Within a minute, she had the situation resolved. The child smiling, and the mother looking relieved rather than embarrassed. As the night went on, Vin finished his meal but lingered over coffee, taking mental notes. He saw Elisa check her phone during a brief lull, a worried glance followed by what looked like a text message. Probably checking on her son, he guessed. When the diner finally began to empty around 10, he watched the staff work together on closing tasks. Elisa helped another server count her tips while simultaneously restocking the condiment station. She showed the young hostess a faster way to organize menus. She even spent a few minutes teaching Tina a better technique for rolling silverware in napkins. It was nearly 11 when Vin finally asked for his check. The diner was mostly empty now, just a few late-night stragglers nursing coffees. "It's on the house," Elisa said when he tried to pay. "I'd rather pay," he insisted. "I'm here checking on my investment, remember? Can't really evaluate the business if I'm not treated like a regular customer." She smiled at that. "Good point." She placed the check folder on the table. "Though I should warn you, Tina added a 20% movie star tax to your bill." Vin laughed, surprised by her easy humor given their earlier encounter. "Seems fair." As he counted out cash for the bill, he casually asked, "So what's next with your car situation? Any plans?" The brief flash of worry returned to her face, but she quickly smoothed it away. "I'm going to see if my mechanic will let me pay in installments. In the meantime, I'll figure out the transportation puzzle. There's a coworker who lives near me who might be able to give me rides to work." "And school?" he asked. "One day at a time," she said, with the practiced optimism of someone used to navigating difficult circumstances. "My next class isn't until Tuesday. Something will work out by then." She glanced at her watch. "Speaking of which, I should finish closing up. My mom's watching my son and she has an early shift tomorrow." Vin nodded and stood to leave. "Thanks for the meal. And the service. Both were excellent. Thanks for understanding about earlier," she said, her voice lower. "Not exactly professional to have the boss find you crying in the break room." "We all have tough days," he repeated his earlier words. "Take care, Elisa." As he walked out to his car, Vin found himself thinking about what he'd seen tonight. Not just Elisa's situation, but the whole atmosphere of the diner. In his movies, he often played characters surrounded by a chosen family, people bound by loyalty rather than blood. It seemed he'd accidentally created a real-world version right here in this small roadside restaurant. He sat in his car for a long moment before starting the engine. An idea was forming, not just about how to help one hard-working server with a broken-down car, but something bigger, something that might honor the spirit of community he'd witnessed tonight. Vin pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found his business manager. It was late, but this couldn't wait until morning. The plan taking shape in his mind felt right in a way few business decisions ever had. "Bobby," he said when his manager answered, "I need you to look into something for me first thing tomorrow. It's about Toretto's Diner." The next morning, Vin sat in the back corner of a small coffee shop 10 miles from the diner, baseball cap pulled low as he waited for his business manager to arrive. He'd chosen this place specifically because it was unlikely any of the Toretto staff would wander in. The meeting needed to be private. Bobby Chen hurried through the door at precisely 9 o'clock, his leather messenger bag slung across his body and 2 phones in his hand. He spotted Vin immediately and slid into the seat across from him. "This is early for you," Bobby said, setting down his phones, "especially on a Saturday." "Must be important." Vin pushed a coffee toward him. "Already ordered your usual." "Thanks." Bobby took a sip and stew. Dyed Vin's face. They'd worked together for 15 years, long enough that Bobby could read his clients' moods better than most. "So, Toretto's Diner, what's up?" "The quarterly reports looked fine last month." "The diner's doing well," Vin confirmed. "Better than expected, actually. That's not why I called you." He spent the next 10 minutes telling Bobby about his visit the previous night, about Elisa, her situation, and the overall atmosphere he'd witnessed among the staff. "Sounds like you found some good people," Bobby said when Vin finished. "But I'm guessing you didn't drag me out here just to tell me about a nice waitress with car trouble." Vin leaned forward, his voice low despite the empty tables around them. "I want to set up an employee assistance program for the diner staff. Something substantial. Education grants, emergency funds, that kind of thing." Bobby's eyebrows shot up. "That's not a small undertaking. We're talking about a roadside diner with what, 15 employees? 23 according to the last payroll report," Vin corrected. "And I know it's not a typical business decision, but this place—" He paused, trying to find the right words. "It feels like something from one of my movies, you know? People from different backgrounds coming together, looking out for each other even when times are tough." Bobby nodded slowly. He'd been with Vin long enough to understand how the lines between his clients' on-screen personas and real-life values sometimes blurred. Family, loyalty, community, these weren't just movie themes for Vin, they were core beliefs. "I can look into setting something up," Bobby said, pulling out a tablet and making notes. "We'd need to work out the details. Tax implications, structure, how employees would qualify, who would administer it. I want to keep my direct involvement quiet," Vin added. "The program should come from Toretto's management or something similar. Not my personal charity, keeping a low profile." "Got it," Bobby continued typing. "What kind of budget are we talking about?" Vin named a figure that made Bobby pause his note-taking and look up. "That's generous," Bobby said carefully. "Very generous for a small business initiative." "Start with Elisa's car," Vin said, ignoring the implied question in Bobby's tone. "Find out exactly what's wrong with it, what it would cost to fix. Or maybe it makes more sense to get her something reliable but used. Nothing flashy. Something practical for a single mom." "You want me to buy her a car?" Bobby asked, his professional demeanor slipping for a moment. "I want the employee assistance program to help with her transportation emergency," Vin corrected. "She's putting herself through nursing school while raising a kid alone. She doesn't need charity, she needs support." Bobby nodded, understanding the distinction. "And the other employees?" "Let's find out what they need," Vin said. "Talk to the manager discreetly. See what issues keep coming up."
"Healthcare?"
"Childcare, housing, education. Build the program around the actual needs." "This could get complicated," Bobby warned. "That's why I pay you the big bucks," Vin replied with a slight smile. "Make it happen, but keep my name out of it as much as possible." "I'll see what I can do," Bobby promised, finishing his coffee. "Anything else while I've got you here?" "The studio called about that script change you wanted for the next film." For the next half hour, they handled regular business matters, but Vin's mind kept drifting back to the diner and its staff. He couldn't explain exactly why this particular investment had suddenly become so important to him, but it had. On Monday morning, Vin found himself parked across the street from Pacific Motors, the auto shop where Elisa's car had been towed. He'd gotten the name from Bobby, who'd been surprisingly efficient in tracking down the information. This wasn't part of the plan they'd discussed. Bobby was supposed to handle everything behind the scenes, but something had pulled Vin here. Some need to see things for himself before setting the larger plan in motion. The repair shop was small but well-maintained, with a clean waiting area visible through large windows. Vin watched as a middle-aged man in blue coveralls spoke with a customer at the counter, gesturing at a clipboard between them. After the customer left, Vin got out of his car and crossed the street. The bell above the door jingled as he entered. "Be right with you," called the mechanic from beneath a raised Honda. Vin took a seat in the small waiting area, removing his sunglasses but keeping his cap on. A coffee machine gurgled in the corner, and automotive magazines were scattered across a small table. The mechanic rolled out from under the car and stood up, wiping his hands on a rag as he approached the counter. He was in his 50s with gray hair and lines around his eyes that deepened when he smiled. "Morning. How can I help you?" He did a double take as he recognized Vin, but to his credit maintained his professional demeanor. "I'm here about a car that was brought in on Friday," Vin said. "A 2008 Toyota Corolla. Belongs to a woman named Elisa Rodriguez. The mechanic's expression shifted slightly. You family of hers? No, Vin admitted. I'm her employer, actually. She works at Toretto's Diner down on Highway 101. The mechanic nodded. Nice lady. Comes in for oil changes regular as clockwork. He sighed. Shame about the transmission. Old car like that, repair costs more than the vehicle's worth, honestly. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, Vin said. What's the actual damage? The mechanic, his name patch read Lou, pulled up some information on his computer. Transmission's shot. That's the main issue. But while we were looking at it, found some other problems too. Brake lines are getting worn. Power steering fluid was low. Timing belt's on its last legs. He looked up at Vin. All told, we're talking close to $4,000 to make it safe and reliable again. And the car itself? What's it worth? Lou shrugged. Blue Book? Maybe $2,500 in good condition. Which it ain't, Vin nodded, thinking. What would you recommend if it was your family member in this situation? Fix it or replace it? Honestly? For that kind of money, I'd be looking for a newer used car, Lou said. Something with fewer miles, better safety features. Especially with a kid in the picture. This caught Vin by surprise. She mentioned her son to you? Oh, sure, Lou said. Got his picture right on her keychain. Cute kid. She's always careful about getting regular maintenance done. Says she can't afford to break down with him in the car. He shook his head. I hate to be the one to tell her this transmission thing isn't a quick fix. Vin was quiet for a moment, processing this additional insight into Elisa's life. A single mom putting herself through nursing school, making sure her old car got regular maintenance to keep her son safe, yet still hit with an unavoidable major repair. What if I asked you to find her a good used car? Vin asked. Something reliable, good on gas, safe. Nothing fancy, but solid. 4,000 to 6,000 range. Could you do that? Lou's eyebrows rose. I could. I know most of the honest dealers in the area. He paused. But shouldn't you be having this conversation with Ms. Rodriguez? It's her car, after all. It would be through our employee assistance program, Vin explained, using the cover story he and Bobby had developed. For hardship situations like this. But we want to make sure we're getting her something that actually meets her needs, not just the cheapest option. Lou seemed to consider this for a moment, then nodded. I might know of a couple possibilities. There's a 2016 Honda Civic one of my customers is looking to sell. His daughter went off to college, doesn't need it anymore. Low miles, well maintained. I did all the work on it myself. That sounds promising, Vin said. Could you get me the details? And maybe keep an eye out for one or two other options? Sure thing, Lou agreed. And what about her Toyota? What should I tell her when she calls to check on it? Tell her you're still evaluating the full extent of the repairs, Vin said. We need a couple of days to get this set up properly. As Vin stood to leave, Lou called after him. You know, it's not every boss who'd go to this much trouble for an employee. She's lucky to work for you. Vin shook his head. From what I've seen, we're the lucky ones to have her working for us. Back in his car, Vin called Bobby to update him on the conversation with Lou. So you want me to fast-track the car situation? Bobby summarized after Vin explained. Yes, but it needs to be done right, Vin insisted. I want the assistance program officially established first with clear guidelines. The car shouldn't look like a personal gift from me. It needs to be a legitimate benefit through the program. Something any employee in a similar situation could qualify for. I'm on it, Bobby assured him. I've got a lawyer drawing up the paperwork now. Should have something for you to review by tomorrow. Good, Vin said. And Bobby? See what you can find out about nursing school tuition costs in this area. Just for background. There was a pause on the other end of the line. You're really invested in this, aren't you? Bobby finally asked. Vin looked out his car window at the auto shop, thinking about Elisa and the little community she was part of at the diner. Yeah, he said simply. I am. As he drove away, Vin realized he felt more energized by this project than he had by anything in recent memory. Movies were one thing. They let him create stories about the values he believed in. But this was a chance to quietly support those same values in the real world. Without cameras rolling or publicity involved, it felt right. And in Vin's experience, that was always worth pursuing. 3 days later, Vin sat in his home office, reviewing the documents Bobby had prepared. The Toretto's Family Fund was now officially established with clear guidelines, application procedures, and categories of assistance. Bobby had done an impressive job putting everything together quickly. "This looks good," Vin said, scrolling through the digital paperwork on his tablet. "I like the name." "Thought you would," Bobby replied from the video call screen on Vin's desk. "The diner manager is on board. He was surprised but supportive once I explained how it would work." "And he understands to keep my personal involvement quiet?" Vin asked. "Absolutely. As far as anyone at the diner knows, this is coming from ownership as a corporate initiative. Your name isn't on any of the paperwork." Bobby shuffled some papers on his end of the call. "Now about the car situation, Lou found 3 options. I've emailed you the details." Vin opened the email and looked through the information. The Honda Civic Lou had mentioned looked like the best choice. Reliable, good safety ratings, excellent gas mileage, and within the budget they'd discussed. "Go with the Civic," Vin decided. "When can we have it ready?" "Lou says he can have it detailed and checked over by tomorrow afternoon," Bobby said. "I've already set up the paperwork to transfer it through the assistance program. Everything's legit." "And Elisa's application for transportation assistance?" "The manager helped her fill it out yesterday," Bobby reported. "She thinks she's applying for a loan to fix her car or for temporary transportation help. She has no idea she's getting a replacement vehicle." Vin nodded, satisfied with how things were progressing. "What about the tuition assistance aspect of the program?" "That's set up too," Bobby confirmed. "Any employee who's been with the diner for at least a year can apply for educational grants. We've structured it to cover up to 75% of tuition for job-related education, which would definitely include nursing school." "Perfect," Vin said. "I want to be there when she gets the news about the car. Not directly involved, just nearby." Bobby raised an eyebrow. "Getting pretty invested in this one employee, aren't you?" Vin shrugged. "It's not just about her. She represents something important. If we can help her succeed, maybe she inspires others. That whole diner has a special vibe. People supporting each other, working together. I want to reinforce that, not disrupt it." "Well, the manager suggested giving her the news tomorrow afternoon before her shift starts," Bobby said. "Around 3. Said that would give her time to process it before work." "I'll be there," Vin decided, in the background. After finishing the call with Bobby, Vin leaned back in his chair, thinking about how quickly this had all come together. What had started as a simple investment, buying a diner as a quiet business venture, had evolved into something more meaningful. He was curious to see where it might lead. The next day, Vin arrived at Toretto's diner at 2:45 p.m., parking across the street to observe without being immediately noticed. The afternoon lull was in effect. Just a few customers lingered over late lunches, and the staff was preparing for the dinner rush. Through the windows, he could see the manager, Dave, nervously straightening menus at the front counter. Lou from the auto shop stood nearby, keys in hand, looking equally anxious about their plan. At precisely 3 o'clock, a bus pulled up at the stop half a block from the diner. Elisa stepped off wearing jeans and a light jacket instead of her uniform, her hair pulled back in her usual practical ponytail. She checked her watch and quickened her pace toward the diner. Vin stayed in his car, window rolled down slightly so he could hear what happened. This was their moment, not his. As Elisa approached the diner, Lou stepped outside to intercept her. "Ms. Rodriguez?" he called, though Vin knew they'd already met during her car troubles. She looked confused to see the mechanic at her workplace. "Mr. Brennan? Is this about my car? I was going to call you today." "Sort of," Lou said, gesturing toward Dave, who had now joined them outside the diner. "Your manager and I have something to discuss with you." Elisa's expression shifted from confusion to worry. "Is everything okay?" Dave stepped forward, holding a folder with the newly created Toretto's Family Fund logo on it. "Everything's fine, Elisa, better than fine, actually. Do you have a minute before your shift?" "Sure," she said cautiously. Dave handed her the folder. "The ownership group has established an employee assistance program, the Toretto's Family Fund. It's designed to help staff during hardships and to support education and advancement." Elisa opened the folder and began reading the documents inside. Her brow furrowed in concentration. "We fast-tracked your application for transportation assistance," Dave continued, "given your situation with the car and how it impacts your ability to get to work and school." "Application? But I didn't," Elisa began. "I helped you fill it out, remember?" Dave said gently. "Yesterday after your shift?" "That was real?" Elisa looked up surprised. I thought you were just getting information about my situation to help me figure out options. Lou cleared his throat. About your Toyota. The transmission is completely shot. With the other issues I found, fixing it properly would cost more than the car is worth. Elisa's shoulders slumped slightly. I was afraid of that. I'll have to figure something out with the bus schedule, I guess. At least until I can save up for something else. Actually, Dave said, pointing to a section in the folder, your application for transportation assistance has been approved. Approved for what? Elisa asked, sounding confused. Lou grinned and held up a set of keys. Approved for this. He gestured toward a blue Honda Civic parked in the space nearest the diner's entrance, a space usually reserved for takeout orders. The car wasn't brand new, but it was clean and clearly well maintained. Elisa stared at the car, then at the keys, then back at the paperwork in her hands. I don't understand. The fund determined that replacing your vehicle was more cost-effective than repairing it, Dave explained. This is a 2016 Honda Civic with low mileage. It's been thoroughly checked and has a 6-month warranty from Lou's shop for any issues. But, Elisa shook her head, clearly struggling to process what was happening. How? This is too much. I can't accept this. It's not a gift, Dave clarified, pointing to the paperwork. It's an approved benefit through the Employee Assistance Program. All employees who face similar hardships would be eligible for similar help. The fund values keeping our staff employed and able to pursue their goals. And there's a small monthly payment, Lou added. $200 deducted from your paycheck. Much less than a typical car loan, but enough that you're contributing. The rest is covered by the fund. From his car across the street, Vin watched as Elisa looked back and forth between the papers and the car, clearly overwhelmed. This was the tricky part of their plan, making the assistance substantial enough to actually help, but structured in a way that maintained her dignity and independence. And this is real? She finally asked. Not some kind of joke or mistake? It's real, Dave confirmed. The ownership recently decided to reinvest in the staff who make this place special. There's more information in the packet about other types of assistance available, including educational grants that might help with your nursing program. Elisa's hand went to her mouth as the full impact seemed to hit her. She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears, but these were clearly different from the ones Vin had witnessed in the break room a week earlier. I don't know what to say, she finally managed. Say, you'll take the keys and check out your new car, Lou suggested with a smile. I picked it especially for a mom with a young son. Good safety ratings, plenty of room for groceries and school stuff, excellent gas mileage. With slightly shaking hands, Elisa accepted the keys. Lou walked her to the vehicle, showing her the features as Dave watched from the diner entrance. Looking pleased at how their plan was unfolding, Vin felt a warm satisfaction spread through his chest as he watched from across the street. He'd helped create countless fictional moments of triumph and redemption on movie screens, but witnessing this real-life moment of relief and possibility for someone who truly deserved it was uniquely gratifying. After a few minutes, Lou returned to his truck, waving goodbye to Elisa, who remained beside the Civic, still looking slightly dazed. Dave had gone back inside the diner to handle a customer. Vin was about to start his car and leave when he saw Elisa open the folder again and study something intently. Then she looked up, her gaze scanning the area until it landed directly on his car. For a moment, they simply looked at each other across the street. Then slowly, deliberately, she gave a small nod of acknowledgement. Somehow she knew. Vin returned the nod, then started his engine and drove away. He hadn't wanted recognition, but there was something fitting about her awareness. In his movies, there was always that moment of connection, of unspoken understanding between characters. As he merged onto the highway, his phone buzzed with a text from Bobby. Car handoff successful. Educational grant paperwork processed. Phase 1 complete, Vin smiled to himself. This was only the beginning of what the Toretto's family fund could do. He was already thinking about expanding the program, perhaps to other small businesses he owned. In his films, family wasn't just about blood. It was about finding people who stand by you, who help you become your best self. Maybe in a small way, he could bring that same ethos to the real world, starting with a roadside diner and a hard-working server who deserved a break. 6 months later, Vin found himself once again pulling into the back parking lot of Toretto's Diner. It was a cool autumn evening, and the neon sign glowed brightly against the darkening sky. He hadn't visited in person since the day Elisa received her car, though he'd kept close tabs on the diner and the employee assistance program through regular updates from Bobby and Dave. The Toretto's family fund had grown beyond his initial vision. What started as a way to help one dedicated server had expanded into something that touched every aspect of the diner's operation. The educational grants now supported 3 employees pursuing degrees. An emergency child care provision had been added after a cook nearly lost his job due to babysitter problems. Most recently, they'd established a small housing assistance program to help a young dishwasher get his first apartment. Vin sat in his car for a moment, taking it all in. The diner looked busier than ever, with nearly every parking space filled despite it being a Tuesday night. According to the financial reports, revenue was up almost 30% from the previous year. He pulled his usual black cap low and stepped out of his car. Tonight, he wasn't here to observe secretly or check on his investment. He had received a handwritten note, actual paper mail delivered to his business office, that had prompted this visit. The note had been simple. The staff of Toretto's would like to invite the owner to our family dinner on Tuesday at 10 p.m. after closing. No cameras, no publicity, just good food and gratitude. Elisa Rodriguez. As Vin approached the back door, he noticed something different. A small wooden sign had been mounted beside the entrance. When you're here, you're family. It wasn't a slogan borrowed from a chain restaurant. It felt like a genuine statement of values. He pushed open the door and stepped into the kitchen. The usual cooking sounds had been replaced by cheerful voices and the clatter of plates being arranged. The space had been transformed. The prep tables pushed together to form one long dining table stretched through the kitchen and into the main dining area, which had been cleared of customers. White tablecloths covered the utilitarian surfaces, and someone had strung small lights across the ceiling. "He's here," called a voice, and suddenly the kitchen fell silent as all eyes turned toward Vin. Dave stepped forward, extending his hand. "Mr. Diesel, thank you for coming." Vin shook his hand. "Thanks for the invitation. Looks like I'm interrupting something." "Not interrupting," came another voice as Elisa emerged from the dining room area. "You're the guest of honor." She looked different than when he'd last seen her, more confident somehow, standing straighter. She wore her diner uniform, but with a new pin on the collar that read, "Shift Supervisor." "We figured it was time to properly thank the man behind the Toretto's Family Fund," she said with a warm smile, "though we had to do some detective work to confirm our suspicions." Vin glanced around the room at the assembled staff, cooks, servers, busboys, hosts, all looking at him with expressions ranging from awe to appreciation. "The fund comes from the business," he said carefully. "It's not a personal—" "We know how these things work," Elisa interrupted gently. "Businesses don't suddenly create employee assistance programs without someone championing the idea." She gestured around the kitchen. "And none of us believed it was a coincidence that the program appeared right after your visit and my car trouble." Vin smiled slightly, recognizing he'd been caught. "The fund was a good business decision. Happy employees, better retention, improved service. The diner's doing better than ever." "Uh-huh," said Tina from where she stood by the stove. "That's definitely why you did it." A soft chuckle ran through the gathered staff. "Either way," Dave said, "we wanted to thank you properly. Not with speeches or ceremonies, but with what we do best, food and family." He gestured to the long table. "We each brought something special, a potluck of sorts." Vin looked at the table, now noticing the diverse array of dishes spread across it. "You didn't have to do this." "We wanted to," Elisa said simply. "Please join us." As Vin took a seat at the center of the long table, staff members began introducing themselves and their dishes. The night cook, Alberto, had brought his grandmother's paella. Lily, the young hostess, presented a plate of beautiful cupcakes she'd baked herself. The elderly busboy, whose name Vin learned was Howard, had contributed a perfect apple pie using his late wife's recipe. The food kept coming, dishes representing the diverse backgrounds of the staff. Korean short ribs, Polish pierogi, Filipino lumpia, soul food mac and cheese. Each dish came with a story, a connection to family traditions. As they ate, Vin noticed how naturally the conversation flowed around him. These people genuinely enjoyed each other's company. They teased each other good-naturedly, finished each other's sentences, and showed the easy comfort of people who had become more than just coworkers. "So," he said to Elisa, who was seated beside him, "I see you got a promotion. Shift supervisor?" She nodded. "2 months ago. Dave needed help with scheduling and training new staff since we've gotten busier." "And nursing school?" "Going well," she said, her eyes lighting up. "The educational grant covered this semester's tuition completely. I'm on track to finish the program next year." She hesitated, then added more quietly, "I never would have made it without the help from the fund. The car, the tuition, it changed everything." "You'd have found a way," Vin said. "People like you always do." "Maybe," she acknowledged, "but it would have been a much harder path. My son's happier too. I have more time with him now that I'm not spending hours on buses or worrying constantly about money." As the meal continued, other staff members shared how the fund had impacted them. Tina had used housing assistance to move out of a bad living situation. One of the cooks had received emergency dental care he couldn't otherwise afford. The young dishwasher proudly announced he was starting community college classes in January, with help from the educational grants. "The thing is," Dave said, refilling Vin's glass with water, "it's not just the money. That helps, obviously. But what really changed was how people feel about working here. This isn't just a job anymore. It's a family," Howard, the elderly busboy, finished for him. "I've worked a lot of places in my 70 years. Never felt like this anywhere else." Vin looked around the table, taking in the faces of these people who had connected so deeply with the values he tried to portray on screen. Family, loyalty, supporting each other. Here it was, happening naturally in a roadside diner he'd purchased almost on a whim. "I have something to share too," Elisa said, standing up and gathering everyone's attention. "I didn't tell anyone yet because I wanted to save it for tonight." She took a deep breath. "I got accepted into the hospital residency program for after graduation. It's paid, with benefits, and they only take 5 students each year." Cheers erupted around the table. Tina jumped up to hug her, and Dave clapped her on the shoulder with obvious pride. "That's not all," Elisa continued when the noise died down. "Part of my application was an essay about community support systems in healthcare. I wrote about this place, about how the diner and the Toretto's Family Fund showed me what it means to truly care for people." She looked directly at Vin. "The hospital administrators were so impressed with the program that they want to learn more about it. They're considering creating something similar for their non-medical staff." A ripple of proud murmurs spread around the table. The impact of what had started with one crying server and one observant owner was expanding beyond the diner's walls as the evening wound down and staff began cleaning up, working together effortlessly as always. Vin found himself standing with Elisa near the back door. "Thank you for coming tonight," she said. "It meant a lot to everyone." "Thank you for the invitation," he replied. "This was special. The fund is growing," she said. "Dave mentioned you approved expanding it to 2 other small businesses you own." Vin nodded. "It's a good model, sustainable." "It's more than that," Elisa said thoughtfully. "In your movies, you're always talking about family being the people who stand by you, who help you become better. That's what you've created here. A place where that happens in real life off-screen." Vin smiled, touched by her understanding of what mattered to him. "The best investments aren't always about money." "Well," Elisa said with a grin, "according to Dave, the diner's profits are up since all this started. Turns out treating people like family is also good business." As Vin prepared to leave, the staff gathered to say goodbye. There was no fawning or requests for selfies, just genuine appreciation from one family member to another. Walking to his car, Vin felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with box office numbers or critical acclaim. What had begun with hearing a server crying in a break room had evolved into something truly meaningful. A community that embodied the values he'd spent his career portraying on screen. Sometimes, he reflected as he drove away from the brightly lit diner, the most important scenes happen when the cameras aren't rolling at all.